Hi everyone, I'm Mrs. Sooter's brother Pat, and this is Dasher. Today we're going to talk about 3D printing, and I'm going to explain how I made that 3D globe of the moon that Mrs. Sooter brought into class. So what does 3D stand for? Does anybody in class know what the D is in 3D? Well, Mrs. Sooter says you're all pretty smart, so I'm betting somebody knew the answer. D stands for dimensional, so three-dimensional means 3 dimensions: height, width, and depth. And, by example, you all know how to draw on a piece of paper, right? You can draw a flat line in any direction, but it's always flat. It never has any kind of height or depth. Like here in this computer program, I'll draw 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, and 4 lines, and now we have a rectangle. That rectangle is in 2 dimensions right now. I'll shift it so you can see it's kind of flat. So we'll go ahead and we're going to pull that upwards, and now it's a block. So we can look at it from all sides. That's 3-dimensional. You have length, width, and height. So what does all this have to do with a 3D printer? Well, I'm sure you know a regular paper printer can print 2-dimensional pages all day long, flat paper with words or drawings on them. A 3D printer, though, can make objects that can be held in your hands, like this baby Yoda. So here's how it works. You make the design on your computer, like this box with the hinge that I did. Then you run software called slicer software. That takes the 3D dimensional object and slices it into a bunch of thin layers. You can see these layers right here. Each line is a layer. So each line is a thin thread of melted plastic from the 3D printer, one that gets put on top of another, and because they're hot when they're put together, they melt together and form a solid. Thin line of plastic, you ask? Yeah, here's how the printer works. So you have a spool of plastic line, kind of looks like fishing line if you guys are fishermen, or maybe the stuff you put in a weed whip. But you feed it into this hole right here on the side of the printer, and you run it up and run it up and run it up. And eventually it comes out, let's look inside, comes out of this long plastic tube. There we go, here it comes. Okay, now I have the cover off of this printer nozzle so that you can see how it works. So you take that line and you put it into a hole on the top, like so. And you can see there's a tiny gear, like a sprocket, and it has to go past that sprocket. And then what that does is it pinches the line and it rolls the line all the way through down to this bottom part that's really hot. That bottom block you see right there is really warm, and it melts the plastic and pushes it through this nozzle, and it comes out in a thin line, and that line is hot. I'm not going to touch it until it cools off, but it does cool off pretty fast. And it keeps going, keeps going. As long as the printer's running and you're printing something, it keeps pulling that line through, melting it, and putting it where the printer puts it. The printer nozzle, that hot part, it's moved around by motors and pulleys. The pulleys are those black things with the ribbed edges. And the motors are these things that you see spinning back and forth. So that makes the nozzle go backwards and forwards and side to side. To get 3 dimensions, we need height. So the platform that it's being printed on moves down a little bit between every layer. If you remember those lines in the slicer, that's what that was showing you, every layer. So as the platform moves down, it builds up the plastic. Here's the start of a print. The first layer looks just like a 2-dimensional drawing. But then the platform moves down and the next layer or slice builds up on top. As you can see in this speeded up part, a lot of very thin slices of melted plastic eventually make a box. What I like about this printer is that I can have an idea for something and then I can actually make it, and it appears, and it's a real object I can hold in my hand. It's not just a drawing on a piece of paper. What would you print if you could? Maybe think about that. Oh, and what does the top part of this box say on it? If you can read cursive writing, you'll know it says Mrs. Sooter. So thanks for being such good listeners. As a reward, Mrs. Sooter is going to go around now and hand out some gifts I made for you on my 3D printer. It's for each and every one of you. It's a place where you can put your little treasures or whatever you want. So thanks again, and don't forget to thank Mrs. Sooter. She is probably the best teacher you will ever have. Enjoy.